Good morning and welcome to the regular meeting of the Town of Bethlehem Industrial Development Agency. It's Wednesday, April 22nd. We are meeting as we do regularly, especially on Wednesday mornings at the Bethlehem Town Hall. All of our meetings are open to the public. We invite guests to come to all of our meetings. We have some people here this morning. It's wonderful to see. Our meetings are also always webcast, and we absolutely welcome the public. It is 8:35, and what I'd like to do first is the call to order roll call for, let's limit it to members and town staff. Thank you, guests. And we'll confirm that we have a quorum. I'll start and then we'll go around. My name is Victoria Storrs. I'm the chair of the Town of Bethlehem IDA.
I'm Chris Welch. I'm the vice chair.
Kate Hedgeman, agency counsel and executive director.
Alexis Carlin, associate at Hedgeman Law Firm.
Georgette Steffens-Altamari, board member.
Brianne Connor, senior economic developer for the town.
Jackie Hopes, board member.
Victor Franco, board member.
Richard Cotlow, board member and treasurer.
David Van Lugen, town supervisor.
Rob Leslie, town director of planning.
Ted DeBarbieri, board member and secretary.
Okay.
Kate, do you want to capture our guests too?
Nope. Thank you. I confirm that we have a quorum. All 7 members of the IDA board are here. So I will call the meeting to order at 8:36 a.m. Thank you very much. Our first order of business is to approve the minutes from the March regular meeting. And these have been circulated and reviewed by members. Are there any questions, comments, or updates to the minutes as presented in our packet?
No.
I move to accept as written.
Second.
Okay. I was not at this meeting, so I will abstain from the vote. But all in favor of accepting the minutes?
Aye.
One abstention. Any nays? The motion to accept the minutes passes with 6 yes and 1 abstention. Our next order of business is the financial report.
Al?
Good morning. We have the financial report for the period of March 31st, 2026. Statement of net assets. Our total checking and savings account balance is $1,887,322.32. We also have prepaid expenses of $23,2501, giving us total assets of $1,889,647.33. Liabilities, we have accrued expenses of $20,916.63, gives us net assets of $1,868,730.70. Statement of revenue and expenses, total income year to date is $138,283. Expenses, contractual expenses, $53,441.39. Business and economic development, $93,08.99. Total expenses, $62,750.38, gives us ordinary income of $75,532.62. Add back interest income of $14,008.76, gives us a net income of $89,541.38. Compare actual to budget. We're pretty much online with the revenue. We'll start going backwards on that unless we have a closing, because I book all the revenue in the first month of the year, and we received it all the first month of the year, so that won't change. On the expense side, we're a little bit over on contractual expenses, but that's expected. We pay a lot of our bills in the first few months of the year. We're a little under on business and economic development, but that'll probably turn around, get a little closer to average. So we're actually ahead of budget by about $22,281.87. Are there any questions on the March statement?
I just want to reiterate what Al has said. By the way, Al is our CFO and controller of the agency. Is that we have budgeted from our fund, our surplus for the end of the year. So as Al had indicated, even though the surplus, net income of $89,000, as he mentioned, during the year we will expend more money. At the end of the year, we have budgeted a deficit of approximately $106,000. That's it.
Okay, thank you. The next item of business is the report from our executive director, Kate.
Thanks. I just have a few items that are more in line of reminders than anything else. Just a reminder that May 6th, we have in the evening the town boards event. Hopefully everybody's had that on their calendar and they can make that. If you aren't going to be there, please definitely let me know, because we're planning on having the other boards in the town for an event, and it'd be great to have 100% participation.
What the time?
4 to 6.
Yeah, 4 to 6.
4 to 6. Okay.
April 29th at 8:30, the marketing committee is meeting, and we'll have a report out at the next meeting. And on May 7th, the governance committee will be meeting. So we'll have a pretty robust May agenda, I think, with some things to ask the board to consider and approve. That's it for me.
Okay, great. I'm looking forward to the event with the town board. David, thank you so much for helping us get all of this together with the other boards, and Rob Leslie as well. If there are questions or particular things that either of you think the other boards would want to know about the IDA, if you could just give us a little bit of a heads up, we'll certainly be able to answer questions. But if there's anything that you think is really going to be top of mind for them, we'd be happy to be prepared for that. I can't believe I just said top of mind. Please forgive me. So moving right along, the Senior Economic Developers Report, Brianne.
I wanted to update the board on where the zoning sits right now with the decision-making in the town board's hands. They're completing some public meetings. There's 2 more hamlets happening this week after the board meeting is Glenmont, Ellesmere, I guess 3 more hamlets because those 2 are combined. And then the other one, remind me, Rob, when the other
It's
one
Delmar and Ellesmere tonight,
Right.
and then next week is North Bethlehem and Slinger.
And then we have 1 more day of zoning office hours on Thursday. And we've had people trickle through that with some good questions, and we've continued to have comments submitted to the board. So they'll have some things to consider. The next round of review for the microenterprise grant to award the final funds has ended. And so we have a group of applicants for the committee to review, and the committee will convene soon on that to award $1,000. I don't know what somebody said. And that's it kind of for my announcements. And is there anything else before I introduce and turn it over to CPO?
Okay.
So as the economic developer for the town, I wanted to thank the IDA for funding this industrial site study. And I want to thank the landowners, those you guys who are here and those who aren't, for agreeing to participate in this study. Completing this study is directly in line with the town's 2022 comprehensive plan's goal to further develop a resilient economy. The plan says that we value a diversity of land uses to balance the tax base, provide jobs, and complement our hamlets and residential districts to sustain fiscal policy objectives. To accomplish this, there is a specific recommendation in the plan to analyze the market potential for Bethlehem to serve as a clean tech hub by analyzing industry trends. Looking at our existing rural light industrial and industrial zoned areas of town, we needed a better understanding of what development potential could be available and how the town could support that development in the future. To apply for state funding opportunities that can support healthy infrastructure development and economic growth takes clear documentation of our current conditions and available opportunities. This study does both of those things. It examines current conditions and available opportunities, and it begins to examine the market potential for Bethlehem and some preferred industries. Anything to add, Rob?
Just that, I'm glad to see the IDA support the efforts to implement the comprehensive plan. I think that's very helpful. I hope that can continue in the future. These types of assessments certainly help to meet town goals, IDA goals, diversify our tax base, expand job opportunities, and increase our eligibility for state funds and investment in our industrial area. So I'm looking forward to moving on to the next step after this is tonight, this morning, and keep moving ahead with activity.
Okay, so I'll turn over to our contractor, CPL.
Great, thank
Take it
you.
away.
So just quick introductions. I think I've met most of you. For anyone I have not met, so my name is Andrew Costa. I'm a principal and civil engineer with CPL. I'll let Tom introduce himself.
Good morning, my name is Tom Bach. I'm a civil engineering project manager with CPL.
And then we also have Gillum. Gillum, can you hear us?
Yep, I can hear you guys great. Hi, everyone. I'm Gillum Sinharoy. I'm a planner with CPL, and I have a background in. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can now. Yep.
Okay, great. I'll start over. Gillum Sinharoy. Nice to meet everybody. I'm a planner at CPL, and I have a background in commercial real estate and did a lot of work in industrial real estate data.
Great. I think on the next slide, just quick agenda for today. We just did introductions. Tom's going to run through the project overview and kind of really quick go through our in-depth analysis. We really want to focus today on the findings, recommendations, and next steps. So we'll spend most of that time, and Gillum will spend most of that time on the suitability matrix. So, Tom, you're up.
All right, thank you. So real quick project recap. When we started this project, we had about 192 parcels. That was kind of put together just based on zoning districts and kind of what the town was interested in reviewing. From that initial review, we narrowed it down to 23 parcels. This was based on transportation access, approximate utility availability, parcel ownership, and just general site conditions. Those 23 parcels, we went through a scoring matrix out of 20. And those are the categories they were scored on. The highest scoring parcels, and with further input from the town, we narrowed it down to these 13 priority parcels, which are the ones we went through this in-depth analysis on. And we've kind of grouped those parcels into 4 areas. So we have the West Yard Road parcels, Route 32 parcels, Kriebel Road, and then Pictway, Bridge Street, and River Road. We group those as one group together. So the in-depth analysis for each of these parcels, we visited with each of the property owners, walked the sites, and also took a closer look at existing utility information that was available. And we also prepared mapping, which is included in the report for each of the parcels, which includes environmental constraints, looked at existing topography, hydrologic soil groups, the utility mapping, as I mentioned. And then we also put together a conceptual site plan for each site, which helped us identify approximate total square footage that could be developed based on the buildable acreage at each of these parcels. And then what Gillum will explain further is the industry suitability matrix that each of these parcels is put through as well. So from our in-depth analysis, these groups, we've kind of identified what we would recommend as being the primary focus for investment. And then we also have secondary and future. So our primary focus areas that we would recommend are the Route 32 and West Yard Road parcels. This is just based on proximity to existing utilities and infrastructure. It matches the surrounding character with industrial development and similar buildings. And then moving on to our secondary focus, we would recommend the Kriebel Road parcels. These were in close proximity to infrastructure. There was some industrial and commercial development along Kriebel Road in the area. These parcels were a little bit smaller in size and kind of spread out more than the West Yard Road and Route 32. So there would be a little bit more investment to kind of benefit all of them at the same time. And there were also a few more environmental constraints on these parcels. And then looking to the future, we would recommend the Pictway Road, Bridge Street, and River Road parcels. These ones are more isolated in nature from the others. The Pictway Road and Bridge Street are close together. However, the River Road is much more isolated. So they would kind of take a little bit more focused investment to get benefit to those sites. And we did also find some more extensive environmental constraints along with further proximity to utilities. With that, I will turn it over to Gillum to talk about our industry suitability matrix.
Great. Well, I apologize for whoever's controlling the PowerPoint because I did some animations on this one. So, when I first looked at this project and looked at the target industries, it was an obvious breakdown between manufacturing and warehouse and distribution, or the more logistics side. So, I focused on manufacturing first and decided to use NAICS codes as the way that I was going to analyze the suitability matrix. So, if you click once, please. NAICS codes, right, for all manufacturing. And if you click one more time, please. The next thing I drilled down to was materials processing. To me, that's just all manufacturing. So I went down to the 3-digit level NAICS code to analyze each different, like, bigger, broad category of manufacturing. So just some examples, like food manufacturing, beverage and tobacco products, textile, paper, etc. Another click, please. And then some of the other categories were a little more obvious to me. Industrial machinery is its own 3-digit NAICS code, so that was obvious. Next one. Click. Semiconductors, it's its own NAICS code. That was really easy to pinpoint, analyze. Next. As was pharma and biotech. And then the last one, if you click for clean energy, that one I did a little deeper dive into what was considered clean energy. And there's a plethora of 5- and 6-digit NAICS codes that I use to combine to make a clean energy category. And so that was all an amalgamation in the matrix into one category. One more click for this page. I did not use NAICS codes for warehouse and distribution because it's just acts so differently. Tenants don't really change too much a warehouse or distribution space, unlike manufacturing. So rather, I looked at the market conditions, absorption, vacancy, etc. All right, next. So these are all the manufacturing data inputs that I considered in the suitability matrix. So just to give you an idea of the NAICS codes on the left, again, the top are examples of the material, all the different materials processings, and then the bottom 4 are those ones that I could drill down and be a little bit more specific on: clean energy, semiconductors, etc. And then I was able to using CoStar data get average land acreage for each of these industries, and I centered it around the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic area. I didn't do like a nationwide because, a warehouse in New York is not going to be the same as a warehouse in, Arizona or Inland Empire in California. So keeping it a little more regional was the goal there. And then other things I graded on, I gave a bit of a weight to emerging industries in the New York area. So the semiconductors, clean energy, if the industry is that exactly, you get a higher weight. And if you're supporting industry for that, like a supplier to batteries or something along those lines, you got a bit of a higher weight there. And then we also looked at electricity, water, natural gas, so a utilities lane. And then also from a production standpoint for manufacturing, what those industries use or how they use to get their goods out. So air, deep sea, rail, truck. And from there, I was, if you go to the next slide, you can kind of see how I graded the scoring criteria, right? So again, along the top of this table, again, are the same inputs. And then the geography, so land, acreage, emergent industry, that was a regional thing. And then everything else, I just used US averages because it's harder to drill down into water intensity just for one area with the data that I was able to utilize. But so for land acreage, I scored it based on the industry's average and the parcel average. So if the parcel fell within 5 acres, it got a higher score, like closer to the industry average, and so on. Lower score if it gets way too small, for instance. And then emergent industry, I explained that one already. scored based on if it's emerging industry, you get a higher score, supplier, the next score. And then neither, you got no score for that. Electricity usage, I scored it based on the nearest point of connection for electrical, same with water and natural gas. And then I weighted it based on the industry's usage of those. So if it's a higher usage of water and it's closer, it gets a higher score. Same with natural gas and electricity. And then for the goods categories, if you got a higher score, for instance, for air, the closer you are to a cargo airport. So the Albany cargo airport, deep sea, I did the Albany seaport because of the connectivity down towards New York, New Jersey seaports. And then rail is just the closest you are to rail, which was all the parcels scored very well for that. It's great rail connectivity in the area. And then truck, it's the closest to an on-ramp to a major highway. And then the weights of those were based on how much that industry uses those types of transportation. And then from there, if you go to that last, I think go another slide, please. Right. So this is in the report as well, and it's the parcels and how they scored on each of the industries. And in the report, we included only the highest scoring. So if an industry got below a certain average score, we just like, well, that's not applicable for this study. So here, food manufacturing, beverage, tobacco is lumped into it, but I kind of see it more as beverage manufacturing, textile mills, product mills, printing, chemical, computer electronics, and then the clean energy. And then in the report, it's actually color coded, showing you the top 3 for each of the parcels. And then I didn't want to delve too much into the details here, but if you go to the last slide for me, yeah, the industry suitability key findings. So there's a lot for key findings for me. It's just like really fun to dive into the data, but the biggest thing that came out was a strong alignment with advanced manufacturing. So the parcels show the strongest overall alignment with various types of advanced manufacturing, whether it's clean energy or pharma and biotech, but also chemical. And that's just reflecting compatibility with modern industrial operations and state economic priorities. That was like taking into account a lot of the other bigger projects that have come to the state as of late. I'll do semiconductor and clean energy together. While full semiconductor fabrication is limited by infrastructure intensity, which may not be the case here, the parcels are well suited for like adjacent uses, the suppliers that come along with semiconductors, such as electronics, machinery, chemicals, and advanced packaging. Same can kind of be said for the clean energy sector as well. Pharma and biotech align well with the study parcels, leveraging conventional industrial parcels while benefiting from New York's life science investments and like that regional innovation ecosystem that is currently happening. And then more traditional manufacturing remains pretty viable. That's like the food, beverage, textiles, printing, particularly on the smaller, more constrained sites, though it ranks a little lower than advanced manufacturing. There's a broad compatibility with machinery, electronics manufacturing, computer, electronic products, electrical equipment manufacturing. They demonstrate moderate to strong suitability across most of the parcels. That makes them pretty realistic near to midterm targets and key enablers of the advanced manufacturing ecosystem in the area. Parcel size and development capacity that matters. That's what the suitability index showed. Larger parcels are with greater building acreage, consistently scored higher with a lot of the industries. It makes sense, making them most competitive for land and capital investment, and then high value manufacturing uses. And then beyond, so that was all the manufacturing section. And then beyond that, looking at the market for warehousing and logistics and distribution uses, those are always going to be good uses for industrial parcels. They're broadly compatible and can support near-term absorption, even though it's not quite as high value as manufacturing. But overall, the looking at the market wide, it's a really tight industrial market, as you guys know. I quoted a 1.4% vacancy rate for Q2, which is crazy low. I'm in Atlanta and it's a huge industrial market here, and our vacancy rate is like 6%. And so it just really shows that low vacancy, that all of the parcels are really well positioned to be developed. There's a strong need for this type of real estate because there's just not that much that can be moved into right now or utilized. So this really bodes well for all industrial types. That is it for me.
Okay, so that was a lot of information and maybe the first time everyone's been exposed to it. So I'm just going to pause right there. And are there any questions for Gilliam and what she just covered?
Is the 1.4% vacancy rate, is that in the county? Is that just in the town? Is that the region?
It is for a specific submarket that all these parcels fall within. It's like the West Outer Albany County, but I think regionally Albany's also on the lower side as a market.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
When you guys are looking at the reports, there's 2 pages in the narrative that color codes those top 3 scores for the different industries. So when you're looking back at it later and you're like, what was Gilliam talking about? It's really clear on these 2 pages in the report. So.
And just think of this as a 2-layer approach, right? We're looking at the land to figure out what it physically can hold. And now we're layering over what the industry and suitability of each industry is for those parcels. So that's what we're trying to accomplish here.
I subscribe to a ton of different listservs that are commercial real estate and industrial related. And every day, I need 30,000 square foot of industrial, like it's in high demand. But with that, is power and water and everything else. So I'll be interested to see, if there's a site readiness, maybe what the next step is to this.
Yeah.
But the demand is extremely high.
And Andrew, Gilliam was talking about the target industries. They need to be supported by sewer and water, correct? And I know you're going to get to that on the next slide. So, but that is one of the key takeaways is while there's land available, the sizes of the parcels might be suitable, there are some missing pieces that still need to be met.
That's correct. And if everyone's okay, I'll just jump into key findings and kind of next steps and talk about that a little bit. So what we did is exactly that. We looked for commonalities between all the parcels. These are more broad range, but we could dive into the details on any of these. So what we took away, yes, as Gilliam backed up, as we've talked with the town, there's several parcels that show promise, but right now, lack of municipal sewer on all parcels is somewhat of a limiting factor. And then there's some limited water infrastructure, which further restricts that development. So one of our recommendations, and you see that on the next slide, is doing more of a capacity study directed at water and sewer so that we can really figure out what improvements need to be made to serve these parcels. So that's the infrastructure challenges. So we broke this out into short-term development strategy and long-term infrastructure investment. So short-term, I like to think of this as kind of low-hanging fruit. And then we would really want to target the Fast New York program. I don't know if everyone's familiar with that. It's a state-funded program that really focuses on developing shovel-ready parks or shovel-ready parcels. There's a couple different tracks. We usually don't go after A because that's the state certified shovel ready. It's really difficult to get that, but we found we have 8 parks in Genesee County and another 3 in Chicago County. We really don't need that certification to attract businesses. So what we focus on is track B. This is your due diligence all your environmental due diligence, your surveys, your geotech, your archaeological investigation, your wetlands, everything that you would go through in the process, and then we have zoning and seeker up there, everything you would go pre-development, so that all your environmentals are taken care of, all your permitting challenges are at least thought through, or you have a plan of attack for. And again, that outcome, you're trying to reduce development risk. You're trying to get all your windows and construction timeframes for your infrastructure within the construction window of a potential client or business siting on the parcel. And then the next step of that is your long-term, and we can relate it back to track C of the Fast New York program, because Fast C really, or Track C really goes after construction dollars for infrastructure improvements. So if we decide we need to upsize an 8-inch water main to a 12-inch and put in a booster pump station, and we're going to extend some sewer or to a collection E, we might be able to tie that back to a Track C application and go after funding. So on Track B, there is a 50, I'm pretty sure it's a 50% match. So if you had $1 million project, Fast New York put toward 500, the town or IDA, we'd have to look at some other sources of funding to come up with that match. What really is beneficial is when you get to Track C, it's not every case, but I have seen up to 90% where they cover the construction dollars. Again, it's really tied to a number of jobs that is a potential coming out of the parcel. Okay, maybe we get 70%, maybe it's a little bit less, but we have a really good working relationship with Christian Mercurio. I don't know if you're familiar with him from ESD. We've had several conversations with him already, not particularly about specific parcels yet, but he kind of knows what we're trying to accomplish here, and he'd be happy to meet with us ahead of time to really formulate a plan that would be funded so that we can move forward. So long sanitary sewer expansion, water system, transportation improvements. I think we touched on just about all of those. I think that would wrap that up. And again, I'm happy to dive into any of that, but I kept it kind of brief for the presentation.
Yeah, excuse my ignorance, but just sitting here and not knowing local government, if you get into infrastructure, don't you have to incorporate a lot of the town departments in feasibility, cost, financing, whether or not the town wants it? So it doesn't, it goes beyond the scope of the agency. Once we take the next step, it's much more of a town project. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, you're right. The town would have to be on board, would actually want to serve the parcels that are in question. They would have to eventually take over operation and maintenance of the system. So there's a lot of factors that would go into that. But one part of we're recommending for the next step is to do that deeper dive on the water and sewer systems and see if there's interest or if there is expandability capabilities there. So.
In a bubble in this room, this happens with, with the resources of our town staff.
Which is extensive, I would imagine, the next step.
Yeah, it's extensive, but we do have the capability obviously we have the capability to help out here, and maybe with some additional assistance from an engineering firm to analyze that stuff as well.
Yeah.
Excuse me, the scoring, was that incorporated in the score? Was the property owner's participation or readiness or interest, was that included as you, because I'd hate to spend all this money and then the property owner isn't interested?
The only parcels included in the study, the property owners are here and participating to know what could happen on their properties. And then, yeah, if we all agree, including the owners, to advance something forward, they would be participating for sure. There are parcels that might have rated in the top set that the owners of those parcels did not want to participate and are not looking to develop their property. So, there's still larger parcels that could fit some of these things in our town, but the owners of those parcels did not want to participate in this
So the
process.
13 that you've identified in the study, all the property owners are willing participants. Thanks.
At least at the moment.
Right, at least to this point, right?
For next steps, does it have to be voted on by town board, or is this something that is this something that's done internally with, within departments?
Yeah, I mean, I think.
And where would the funding come from?
But
for the next step?
if there's funding coming from the town, then certainly the town board would have to approve
Okay.
that funding.
Are we looking for funding from the IDA potentially to do these next steps?
We haven't discussed that yet, but I think the short answer is yes.
Okay.
But we would need to discuss that, at a public session.
Yeah.
I think our intent was to start with this study, and I don't like to see studies sit on a shelf. So, I think we'll have a robust discussion about that. We also have bonding power as well. So, I think the next step really is, taking this and working with planning to say, we'd like to do this next set of studies. Then it's proposed to our board and we would consider doing that, depending upon the cost. But certainly it's within our authority to spend funds on that.
Speaking of funds, you spent some time talking about the Fast New York grant program. How often do sites move forward, move through a process of being evaluated and infrastructured and developed without direct state funding? I know Fast New York and everything is highly competitive. I know in economic development, there is so much talk about the need to apply for and receive a grant, but I would like to hear from CPL, do we really need to wait for that? How often do people succeed just with local resources? And you can be honest, it's important to know this.
Lost the connection.
Oh. That's where this next, I guess, secondary phase is going to be really important, because I think we would want to work directly with you to come up with that list of items, put some dollar figures together, and then really figure out what can be accommodated with local funding versus the match. Because I might come back and say, okay, for 40 acres, we need $1 million, and you're going to say, no, that's crazy. So we can tailor the phasing. We can look at some options here to get a little creative. And like I said, we can talk to EXT directly and see what those dollars look like.
Do you also pull National Grid in for additional funding too?
Yes. Yeah. I think they're hooking us up. They'll fund their studies, or they'll contribute up a piece of it depending on the size of the project, etc. Yep. And that's a critical infrastructure piece where capacity of the system is really tight to the chest.
That was going to be my question. Yes.
Really hard to get any information until you get some momentum, a user, an end user. There is a way that we can do some preliminary, and we've completed some load sheets based on the type of industry, and that can kind of give us a verbal, but a verbal is better than just blind. Yeah, very, very tight to the chest on capacity and even locations, upgrades that would be required.
And the amount of time it would take to.
Yes.
And it's in the report, but just to also state that some of the parcels have adjacency to Selkirk Cochin, and they still have capacity for direct train.
But I think overall, this is a long-term, this isn't something that is gonna be very quick. There's a lot, you're probably looking at 5 years, up to 5 years to really, if the town decides to move forward with it, to get close to where they need to be. Do you think that that's that far off?
Yeah, I think that's fair statement. Sure.
Rob and Brianne, do we have any manufacturing or anything that they've listed, any companies that have been trying to actively get into town?
Not
And
yet,
can't-
because we haven't done this first half.
Okay,
So when there are inquiries that come through ESD, they want something that's already shovel-ready or already built. They don't want a greenfield. So moving something forward on this process opens it up for interest,
okay.
significant interest. There are definitely industries, companies that want to be in New York, but they don't want a 2-year build process. They want a 1 year or less build process. Is that accurate to say you guys deal with this?
Yeah, very accurate. That was my point earlier about getting your construction timeframes and everything for the infrastructure to match that building timeline, because if you're outside that window.
But you're also saying we need to identify some end users to help with, some of the grant
The
processes.
capacity,
Okay.
that's more directly related to the infrastructure capacity. Now, water and sewer, we can get there pretty easily. The power, we're gonna have to go through the process, make some assumptions, fill out the load sheets, and then work with the utility to get those answers.
But the suitability matrix starts to show us also what industries we could target with these infrastructure improvements. What's gonna be a good match industry-wise? So that was a really useful exercise.
And what we've done in the next step for sub-compliance is take our concept plans, approximate square footages based on the industry, and then we can put uses together for that. Will it be 100% accurate? But it'll give us an idea of what water, sewer, electric, gas capacities we need.
So is the recommendation to take these, the priority areas that you identified and move those forward and start thinking about a track B?
Yeah, I think we get there. I think we just want to make sure we're all comfortable moving forward with the selected parcels. Maybe it's not all 4 areas or all 3 areas. Maybe we focus on one that we think we can get pretty quickly. Come up with some recommendations and cost estimates on the due diligence part of it. And then that would be our recommendation, is start that process, looking at utilities, getting some environmentals done to get it closer to shovel ready.
What are you finding that is making a track B application most competitive for ESD? Like, what are the things that they're really looking for? Are they looking at disadvantaged communities? Is that a priority? Like, what is that?
Really, it comes down to, they put a minimum on the acreage, and I think it's 40 acres, 30 to 40 acres. Potential for job creation, and then just overall fit with the region. So we've done a nice first step here. The next part of that will kind of be outlining what we want to do and accomplish with that due diligence, have accurate cost estimates, and we kind of be ready to go.
Do you find that usually if you get a track B, it's an easier track C?
Yeah, because you're already in the system, they're already on board, they're funding the first part of it, they want to see the infrastructure built. So they're more likely at that point to fund the track C and maybe even at a higher percentage.
What, I know each project is very different, but what price ranges are you seeing track B costing?
I mean, we've had them as little as 100,000 all the way up to. So, and then once you get track C, it's really all.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I've seen 2 million all the way up to, I think our highest award was like 64. So,
Andrew,
again, depending on the size of the parcel.
and then, I'm sorry, because I'm getting old and I can't. The parcels, looks like parcel 7 and 4 and potentially 5 are contiguous.
There's
Is
a
that-
bigger map.
Okay, thank you. Amen. Okay, so we've got parcels 6, 7, and 4, and 5 look to be pretty contiguous. The reason I bring that up is, perhaps we should look at the potential for industrial park versus, with a cluster versus individual developments. And you have some continuity, but that seems to be the biggest set of parcels for that. And if you focus on a park, then you're trying to bring water and sewer to one area per se versus all over the place.
Yeah, and ESD's eyes, that's going to be easier. So,
Correct.
More acreage, more jobs, more potential. So yeah, I think we have them grouped, and that was one of our thoughts too, is maybe we look at something a little bit larger, because if you come to them with a 20-acre parcel, 30-acre parcel versus 100 acres, we have more potential.
Rob, when was the last time we had a significant expansion of water or sewer in town? Do you remember?
Vista?
Vista obviously was, 15 or so years ago. We had I'd say, not a significant River Road had some expansion of water over in that area, but from an industrial, non-residential standpoint, there's been some time.
And the River Road expansion was for system resiliency. It wasn't to expand the service area.
Okay. But the service area is expanded for some of the, I've been in town for 25 years, newer developments.
I mentioned the, I think it's called duplicative service and redundancy,
Yeah.
but it ended up helping Air Products and that industrial site over there. So they had
and they did expand.
They did expand, right?
I mean, the last couple of pilot applications we've had has all been for industrial, light, heavy, and potentially, a new parcel that has been subdivided with a new,
The lower part of the road.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's limited to warehouse.
Right.
They're using that for storage, warehouse space. Right, Bird Crane's using that for storage of equipment.
Yeah, I mean, by way of actual development too, I think it's important, like the IDA has certain tools that we can use to attract, businesses to industrial warehouse, whatever we use that for, and to entice people to develop that property. So we have, different tax exemption tools for, construction, sales tax, mortgage tax, all of that. So it kind of fits all together.
And the idea was involved with Vista's infrastructure extension. Wasn't there some type of?
Yeah, it predates me,
You're
but
right,
I do.
There was some involvement.
Yes, because of, there was some sort of bonding and also tax abatement of some sort for Columbia originally, I think.
Yeah, we had a private placement of a tax exempt bond that's being repaid by the owners of the parcels, not by town taxpayers, but deliberately, specifically by the owners of the parcels.
But again, there's a lot we could do with an industrial park with Vista sort of as the model, but,
I think the West Yard Road area fits more towards that industrial park area.
And what parcels?
That's parcels 5 and 4 and 5.
Yep.
6 and 7 are interrupted by a road and there's some constraints out there. So if we're looking at an industrial park type example, Western Road is more of that.
Okay.
Location.
Now, when we think about industrial parks, just to be clear, and it's one option, one way to go, but since we're talking about it and it's a public meeting, that doesn't mean that the IDA takes possession of the land. We don't necessarily become the owner. There's a variety of ownership and management tools that can be used. It doesn't necessarily mean that we would own it.
Right.
We don't own Vista. But we have powers as a partner, I think is one of the best terms to use, is a public partner.
Just as a sideline, we have property 13 down the river road, and currently now we've actually discussed this for the last couple of months, what to actually do with the property to, number one, clean it up, but also entice people to come in because it's been sitting there for quite some period of time, that is. But the septic would also, or sewer, I'm sorry, would also benefit not just us, but the community in general. If it attracted other people to that area as well. It's a whole corridor that's not utilized very well when you drive through, and quite honestly, it could be a beautiful corridor for a bunch of different purposes. But I didn't know if the town was going to look into that as part of the study, what that could be, not just industrial, perhaps commercial, or more residential that is easier to build down there with septics and things that would be now defunct because we have the sewer system that runs there. But I didn't know if that was part of the next step or if that's, I have no idea. I know we're just kind of beginning this, but that should just be something that's.
Yeah, CPL looks specifically at these parcels, but the second recommendation, the long-term, strategy for the town to focus on extension and capacity. The town is looking at the whole town, not just the area of the study. So, there is consideration of the worldwide benefit,
I was just kind of wondering, I'm like,
sure.
I know we're considered industrial commercial down there, but maybe there's another sideline benefit to the whole project that could take an area that's underutilized is a nice word for it and turn it into something different.
Are there any areas of the town that are using what, and I defer to the engineers, a package plant rather than being hooked into a much larger sewer system or having septic, sort of in between kinds of infrastructure that aren't necessarily connected to a big system? Again, since we're just getting some things on the table, paths that development could take with the constraints, do you have thoughts to share either from the town perspective or from our engineers?
I mean, properties on West Yard Road are using So for example, West Yard Road has municipal water, but they don't have sanitary sewer. So those are larger warehouse buildings. They're using septic, but their needs are typical kitchen, bathrooms for employees, right? It's not manufacturing type processes that. So that's one example. Savic is another example. They have their own on-site
wastewater treatment.
Wastewater treatment system. The Port of Albany expansion into Bethlehem will also have its own wastewater treatment on-site system, since there's no public sanitary sewer there. So there are other ways to address, there's a deficiency outside of town infrastructure.
Yeah, I mean, we find the septic is limited.
Yeah.
Obviously, once you get up, I forget the exact gallons per day, but it's probably over 10,000 gallons a day to serve a business park where you're not going to serve a whole business park on septic. So then we can look at package plants and other types of options. The problem with those is the cost.
Right.
So you have that initial capital investment, and then you have the ongoing costs. For long-term solutions, that should be part of the study or the deeper dive that should be done to figure that out globally for the town, and then overlay that with these development areas.
Right. And similarly, the distributive energy, I think they were testing them here when we talked to Plug Power a few years ago. They were using some sites in Bethlehem to test their really industrial-sized fuel cells, which was interesting to hear that it was there. And so that's possibly in the mix if that technology advances to the point where it's not prohibitively expensive. maybe decentralize, because the town is not small physically. So that's a lot of areas that might get bypassed by a pipe if we're trying to reach in. So it's good to hear that there are other kinds of infrastructure.
There's other options, and it always gets tricky to connect back to an existing treatment plant, because then you have to take a look at all the infrastructure up to the treatment plant, and 9 times out of 10, if you have a large business or something, all the pipes are undersized to take that to the treatment plant, so that's when the package plants and the spot treatments become more enticing.
Thank you guys for being here today. Thank you guys for being here today.
What does the IDA's timeframe, if things want to move on to the next, what's like a year, 6 months?
No.
To be able to say, hey, town, I don't know where the town is on it. I'm being able, if there's combined funds to go to the next level, and what kind of time frame are we looking at that?
Well, I know Rob and Brianna are a 2-person shop, so they have a lot on their plate. But as soon as we can all kind of sit down and debrief this, I think, and then Rob and Brianne kind of come out and say, okay, here's what we want to focus on, right? Whatever that is, then they'll come back to the IDA. We meet once a month. So, once we kind of know what that is, but I think it's going to take a little bit for you to.
And we won't want to do that without our DPW staff.
Sure.
In the mix of kind of scoping, I think we're talking about scoping out the next step of what are you looking at. So
it could be, late this year, probably by the time it gets to us. I mean, we probably need a meeting or two, but, it's mostly helping Rob get where they want to be able to propose something.
Once we get the zoning update.
Because that's what I'm like. There are 2 people that I know, there's all this stuff going on.
I'll have some more bandwidth to focus on this.
And then what does the fastener application flow look like? Is it just?
It's rolling.
It's rolling.
Yeah, so you can submit it anytime.
There's nothing fast about it.
Yeah.
And then as far as if they decide to go through with it, where are you guys at?
I think that's to be determined, but you mean timeline?
Timeline.
Like say,
if they're saying they're
hired,
are you?
so due diligence, field work, depending on the size of the acreage, you could be 6 months to 8 months, depending on
So
whether to get everything done.
But you're able to jump on.
Well, depending upon the size of the contract, which I would think would be over the threshold, we would have to put bids out for consultants.
Okay,
so you're probably to get to that point for the IDA to put an RFP out, it could be January. It could be, into next year. We certainly are agile enough to move that pretty quickly, but
everybody's busy too.
Yeah.
I get that.
But I think there's at least a consensus that we're going to look at this and, see what the town would like to do.
I can't speak on behalf of everybody, but I think if there's anything the owners can do to help streamline this or be involved, I know that I'm all in. So, thank you all.
Thank you.
And I know I'll be connecting with all of you too, because this is your property. You have the first voice in it. So.
Very well put, Brianna. Thank you.
I will add also, as someone who's involved in some of this stuff, the state is really agile on making sure that this portion of the state has these projects. And so I think it's important that you all are at the table and being involved, because the state really wants these investments to happen. They want the large scale, industrial stuff happening, especially in our region. And so I think there's a lot of support from the state for this. And so I don't want that to be lost either. I know it is an egregious process, right? Everybody has to do everything, but the state is serious to the extent they can be on making sure that these sites get up and running so that, we can create a more viable economy, especially as it pertains to manufacturing and energy. As we all know, that's an increasing demand And so, not speaking for the state, but as someone who's involved in some processes, I do think that the state is very serious about sites at scale like this. So,
I don't think the hard part is going to be attracting businesses to the development. It's really this interim part of, the infrastructure and being prepared for that. That's what's going to take, a while. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay, so do we have any other business or shall we adjourn the IDA meeting?
The only one thing that occurred to me, especially in light of this discussion.
Why
Just hold it
don't
open.
we, yeah, we'll take a couple of minutes, let our guests go if they wish, but hold the meeting open for Kate to finish her thought.
So Rob, the only thing I was gonna say is that in light of this and a bunch of other things, I thought for the IDA educational purposes, and I don't want to put anything additional on your plate, but I think it'd be good to spend a half hour with you at a meeting and debrief the comprehensive plan. We have new board members. I know that I haven't read all of it. I've read some of it, but I think if, that's important to keep in mind in everything that we do. So at some point, I think, if we could just get some sort of presentation, that would be helpful. Whenever you're ready, not.
Sure.
Any other business? I'll accept a motion to adjourn. Thank you, Ted. Second. All in favor of adjourning?
Aye.
Any opposed? That Dick did have to step out, so that's 6 in favor of adjourning a forum.